Hey guys, Kelly here. I wanted to have a little chat about something that has come up in the D&D world. I was looking on Twitter and following, I follow Chris Perkins, and he, of course, works for Dungeons and Dragons. And there was this discussion about the rules and specifically the rules in social interaction and role playing, and if it's all up to the DM, what's the point of buying the books and having the rules? And I found the discussion interesting, yet from my perspective on how I feel about the game, bizarre. um, because here's the thing, this is a D&D game. This is a role-playing game, any role-playing game. For those of you that know me, follow my stream, you know that I play Vampire the Requiem every week, and I'm the storyteller for that game, and which is the equivalent of a DM. A DM is a dungeon master. You can be called a game master, GM, and in the World of Darkness, it's storyteller. And they purposely changed the name, interestingly enough, in the World of Darkness, from game master to storyteller, because it is a story, it is a narrative. Granted, in the setting of Vampire the Requiem, it's very political. It's very Game of Thrones style political. And so there tends to be less combat because that's not the point of the game. Whereas in D&D, it can be hack and slash, literally an entire campaign of just hack and slash. It all depends on your preference and what kind of game you like, and hopefully you find somebody to run it to your preference if you're a player. If you're a DM and you're running the game, obviously you run it the way you like. Which brings me back to this whole discussion of the point of the rules in D&D, the point of buying these books that can cost you anywhere from $40 to $50, depending on the book. I've always stated that the rules are a guideline. That's all. They help you be impartial, and they help everybody be on the same page for things like combat. So there is some kind of rule setting. If you roll a crit, everybody knows what happens. You roll a natural 20, everybody knows what happens. You roll a natural 1, it could be really bad. But it also doesn't have to be bad. It's totally up to your DM and how your DM wants to play it. And I think for me, that is the point of this. This particular thread on Twitter, it got to where, and this was actually the first thing I read this morning, and then I went back and read the rest of it. But it was essentially, Chris Perkins was answering a whole bunch of questions, being a part of the staff, and this one person kept asking about the rules, and why buy the books and this kind of thing. And I love this answer of Chris Perkins of, make it up is the very essence of the game, and it is. That's the point. This is, sometimes I feel like people have forgotten that that's what it's about. It's about making it up. And ultimately, all games are about having fun, and if you're not in a game that suits your needs and desires of what you consider to be fun, the fun aspects of the game, then you need to find another game, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I play D&D once a week in an adventure league. For those of you that don't know, the D&D Adventure League has even stricter rules. Speaking of rules, they go beyond, because they have rules upon rules, because it's so that people can play at conventions, and everybody knows that the characters are quote unquote legal, haven't been homebrewed. There's not a bunch of stuff in there that, one person can have all this other stuff that somebody else can't. This way it just it levels the playing field, let's put it that way. Which I get on a convention level. Absolutely. I totally understand that. It was difficult for me at first in that environment, excuse me, on a player level who's used to homebrew. I started playing D&D way back in the 80s, and everything was homebrew. Yes, there were modules back then, but the guys that I played with, they would use a module as a guideline, but that was all, kind of to help them tell the story. And 90% of the time, we as players went in totally different directions anyway, and they had to make half the crap up. So, which I find is what happens, normally. When you're playing in an adventure league and you're playing these modules, it's basically everybody is of the mindset of, we have this module, it takes 4 hours to play, we have to finish this module tonight, so you follow that structure of, we're not going to go over here, because if we go over here, we're never going to finish this module. Also, you'll have a DM that maybe is less experienced and, is literally following page by page, paragraph by paragraph. That was me when I started. I didn't DM all those years ago. I never DM'd. I never wanted to DM. I was a player. And I started in the Adventure League because you had these modules that were like, they literally, the term that they tend to use is they railroad you, because they do as a player. They railroad you. This is the tracks. You've got to stay on these tracks, and you've got to go A, B, C, D, E. And for a beginner DM, it's fantastic because you know what's going to happen. You can follow page by page. Technically, they're made so that you don't even have to read them in advance. Whereas normally a DM would have hours upon hours upon hours of prep work. Even using a module, you would want to know that module in and out. If you're going from a book, Curse of Strahd or the new Storm Giants, you want to know that book. You want to know the details, so you read it, make your notes, and it would take hours upon hours. Whereas with an Adventure League, and you have these little modules, you can literally sit down and just DM that night. And that is great for what it is, but ultimately, D&D and role-playing games in general are imagination and our creativity, and the structure is loose. If you look in the books, you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide specifically for D&D, it says right in there that it's the DM's game as far as it's his world, his creation, her world, her creation, and when in doubt, just go with your gut, go with what you feel, go with how the role play is going, whatever the case may be, and I know people that's very difficult for them, because it's got to be, no, this rule is this, and that's how it has to be. Well, when it comes to role playing, there's not a lot of rules, quote unquote, in the book. The book is the rules of combat, the rules of creating your character, all those kinds of things. There's no rules for how you're going to play that character. There's no rules for what decision characters are going to make. And then for a DM, it's your world, technically. Even if you're playing it from a module, you are making that world come alive. So ultimately, it is your world. It's one of the things in the AL League, where I prefer playing the books, and I prefer, having that bit of wiggle room where it's not so railroaded structure of you have to go. Those are fun for a one night thing, a one-off, just to have some fun with friends. That can be really fun, but the books are a campaign. It's a full story. Your character actually gets to grow. You get to go from first level to whatever level. I have a character now in Curse of Strahd that has gone from first level to ninth level, all in this one campaign. Whereas when you're doing the small modules, I'm talking strictly Adventure League now, so homebrewers, hang in with me here. I will get back to that also. But when you're playing those individual modules, your character's all over the place, because it's not always linear as far as the modules. You go back and forth. You also have multiple characters because you don't have to play the same character, and so it's less character growth, and it's less about the role play, which is why I got into role play. Was the role play. When I started playing back in the 80s, I could have cared less about the books. I didn't want to read the books. I didn't want to know. Tell me what I need to roll. Just tell me what I need to roll. This is what I want to do. Tell me what I need to roll. Because it was about the interaction and it was about the role play. It was not about the rules in the book, for me. So that's why I completely prefer, given my preference, a long-term campaign. We've been playing Curse of Strahd for months now. We're almost done, heading to the castle this Wednesday. But Strahd's castle, for those not playing Curse of Strahd, the Vampire Strahd. We're heading to his castle, which is basically, technically, the end of the campaign. If we live or die will all depend on how we are able to get through the castle to him. I feel like I know my character. I feel like I've grown with her. Things have happened in game that weren't in the book. It wasn't laid out, this scene happens here. It was something that, because I went off on tangent, the DM, in sort of a trying to teach me a lesson of going off on my own, because in D&D you don't split the party. But anyway, it was an amazing little side adventure thing that happened one night, and it was the best night of the game for me, because it wasn't scripted. It wasn't in book. We weren't following, okay, so you go to this temple and then you've got to go in this room from this room, or you're going into the Burgermeister's house, and so you're going to search room from room for room. It was pure story, and it was scary, and it was freaky, and it freaked my character out, and I was able to play that in the long term afterwards, when things popped up. I had to roll for fear, for being afraid for things that others did not, because I had that scene, because that was part of the character now. And when you're playing these individual little modules, you don't have that. It doesn't work that way. So anyway, so to backtrack a little bit, I know I got a little off on an AL tangent, but it goes into what Chris Perkins was talking about the rules, and that the whole thing is make it up. The rules are just guidelines. The rules are so, DMs and players can't go off on these, well, I have umpteen this, that, and the other, and I can do this, that, and the other. No, technically that sword does this. Or, technically that spell does this, so it's not going to work that way because this is what the spell does. Totally got to have those rules. Have to. But in the creative process of playing the game and playing your character, there's no rules. You're playing your character, and you're going to respond, differently and whatnot. And even, it's been said. I know that it's been said in the AL League, of DMs running the book and not following piece by piece what's in the book. Kind of like what with me, I had that little offshoot that was not in the book. That's part of the game. That's what the game is. It's like, in my opinion, for me, it's like you live for those moments. And everyone should have those moments. It wasn't just because it was me. I've seen other players, other characters have similar things happen, and that's the fun of the game. I ran Horde of the Dragon Queen, and I know my players did some stuff that, like, it was like just crazy that they talk about to this day. That wasn't in the book. It wasn't in the book. Whether they knew it or not at the time didn't matter. It wasn't in the book. It was the way they were reacting to a situation that I decided. Plus, roles helped to give me a gauge, but of how successful they were with certain things. But I decided that that's how this particular creature was going to react, and like I said, to this day, that was like almost a year ago, and they still talk about it. You know, so those are the fun parts of the game, and um, yeah, to I just guess that I don't understand being when people are so rules heavy. Now I happen to know, in defense of this person, because I don't want to slight this person who is making his own point of making it up as an acceptable answer in a $50 book. Um, Again, there are enough rules in that book, in my opinion, to play the game. I did look up this person. I wanted to see more of where he was coming from, and I kind of understand. He is a game designer, I guess. My apologies if I'm completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was game designer. And so I understand now that if you're making those kind of RPG games, they have to be rules heavy, because there's only so many interactions, because you're playing with the computer, so even in the ones where role playing wise you get to make the decisions, there's only so many decisions you get, and there are specific consequences to each individual answer that you can make. So I get that mentality. But this is just different. It's not a game. It's not a computer game. You're not going to have all that. This is about it really, truly, and people more and more today are bringing this up more to the forefront. This is improv acting. That is what role playing is. It is improv acting. You don't have to be an actor. I'm lousy at voices, so like in my vampire game, most of the NPCs have my voice, maybe a little deeper, maybe a little higher, yeah, but like I can't do accents or anything like that. I'm awful, and I don't consider myself an actor, but it's allowing yourself freely to have those conversations in character, and to think like your character, and not necessarily what would I do, but what would this character do? How does this character feel about this? It very much is improv acting. That's why one of the most popular D&D games out there to watch is Critical Role. Critical Role gets over 20,000 viewers live when they are live on air on Thursday nights. They're all actors. Every single one of them are voice actors, and they role play, brilliantly. Yes, they have the action and rolling the dice and fighting the dragons or this, that, and the other. Absolutely. But you can go an entire 5-hour game with them watching, and there's not a single bit of combat. It's all it's role play. It's what they're doing in town, or they're in some diplomacy situation. I find that amazing and brilliant, and ultimately that's what I want. When I started my game of Vampire the Requiem, I told my players, because my players all came from D&D, the AL league that I'm in, and I told them all, I said, this is not D&D. It's not going to be D&D. It will not be combat heavy at all. In fact, it's going to be roleplay heavy. And they all were fine with that. Those that love combat, they get their combat in D&D. And we've had a little here and there, but everybody has kind of found their niche in the role-playing area. Some have thrived in the role-playing aspect that they don't get to do a whole lot in the Adventure League D&D games. So I just found it like so interesting, with this whole conversation, that Chris Perkins had with this other person, about the rules, and other people chimed in and this and that, that I really just wanted to voice it myself, because I've been recently, I was talking to someone, um, about the, making up of stuff, and I was like, that's the point of the game, is to make up stuff. That's why you play, you know. It's not a video game, by any stretch of the imagination. And right now, there are a lot of people I know, the younger generation, because I'm old, is coming up. They're going to D&D from playing RPGs on the computer, or on PlayStation or whatever. Um, and so it's very different. You're actually playing that character, and you're going to, have a multitude of options and decisions, and it's going to affect the game. And and also from a DM perspective, just because a monster is, generically supposed to act a certain way or be a certain way, it's what you've given that creature, um, as a DM, as a background, as, okay, this is, if they do this, this is how this creature is going to act, and that's my doing. That's not the book doing. That's my doing. Um, if they successfully, you know, um, successfully are able to tame it or talk to it or whatever the case may be, then maybe I will allow that scenario to happen. Um, and then sometimes there's absolutely nothing that they can do. It's going to turn into kill or die. It's all up. That is all up to, the DM. Even with following in the books, playing Curse of Strahd or playing Horde of the Dragon Queen or whatever the case may be. I had it happen in Horde of the Dragon Queen. I took literally one small sentence of what it said about a specific creature and ran with it when they actually started trying to, talk with it. And other DMs would be like, I know some DMs would be like, oh, you did that totally wrong, but because that creature, that would never happen. But again, there's nothing really wrong, unless you're really trying to railroad the characters, into something, or you are, um, purposely, I don't even know what the terms would be, of what I'm actually thinking, but unless you're being like maliciously trying to, be devious or whatever, um, um, to your players, there's nothing wrong with taking this creature and saying, okay, no, you know what? They're really role playing this really well. I had them roll, and their rolls are really good. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go with this. And, they wound up making a friend. It was pretty funny. And it was funny. It was hysterical. But again, like I said, here we are all this time later, and that is what they talk about. That's what they remember. That's what they tell everybody about playing Horde of the Dragon Queen. Mostly is that one scene. So was that wrong? Everybody had fun. Everybody loved it. Everybody enjoyed it. Nothing wrong with that. You know, um, it wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't even hurting the story. From a literal. This is the story of Horde of the Dragon Queen, and you have to follow. That particular story. Nope, didn't even hurt that. So yeah. So it's. You know, I think that there has to be some lightness and some you're there to enjoy the game. I've never completely understood what they call rules lawyers. I get people that have read the books and they understand the majority of the rules. I loved, when I first started DMing, a couple of the guys who knew they've been playing for so many years that they knew lots of the rules. And I loved playing with them when I was DMing because they could help me. what's that mean? What do I do that? And they got me through it. And that was fantastic. And then over time, you know, feeling freer to, if I don't know a spell, not a big deal. Everybody's got it on their phones. What's that spell do? I read it. Okay, fine. And then, but still being freer to tell the story in my own way, following, if we're following a book or whatever, following the story, and there are DMs that's not their forte, especially when you're playing in an AL league. Not everybody is going to be, a great DM. I don't even consider myself a great DM. But and you're gonna have where, like me in the beginning, especially, okay, I had to follow this, and if it didn't say it in there, somebody, player or character, asked a question to an NPC and it didn't, the answer wasn't in the module, I would be like, I don't know, it doesn't say. Part of that too is not having read the whole thing from cover to cover and learned it, because sometimes you can make something up, which I've done, and then it bites you in the ass later because what you said is contradicted later on, and because you didn't read the later on, you didn't know that. So you hate for that to happen too. And that does happen, in AL, because you don't have the freedom of your own game. If I'm playing my vampire game and I say something and it contradicts something that I had planned for the future because I just had a brain fart and totally forgot, I can play around that. I can tweak that on the fly, or for the next session, or whatever the case may be. I'm not following a module. It's my story. It's my world. So those are differences, and I'm totally understanding and respectful of those that it's difficult to go on the fly. I did it to one person, and if she's watching, she knows exactly who I'm talking about. I tried to do a little side thing in Horde of the Dragon Queen. We were co-DMs on it, and I tried to do a little side thing. It totally threw her for a loop because it wasn't in the book, so she had no idea what to do. So I was just like, forget it, don't worry about it. That's part of playing in an adventure league, because you're going to get, people that, they're great when the book is in front of them, but they don't know what to do when it's not on book, and that's okay. And then, I never understood I played years ago in the late 80s with someone who talked about a rules lawyer. Everything took forever because he was going through all the books to look everything up. If the DM said something or contradicted something, that he was like, no, I can do that. And he had to look everything up, and everything would take, 20 minutes of going through all the books and this and that to find what he was looking for. And it made it awful. Honestly, it was that particular game was not a fun game at all, so ultimately what the DM says goes, and if you don't like what the DM says, that's okay. That's quite all right. If that's not your kind of game, if that DM doesn't DM in your style or the way you like, then find another game. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Somebody doesn't want to play in my game because they don't like how I DM. Cool, man. Go find another game. I'm cool with that. I take no offense. I do not look badly upon you, for making that decision, because I've had to make that decision before. So, and if I just wish everybody could have that kind of feeling, and not put it so strict, going back to the Adventure League, I do wish that the Adventure League would kind of broaden a little bit, because I do think you've got new people coming in who come from, and we've had it happen, more than one person has come into the Adventure League because of watching shows like Critical Role. Yet the Adventure League is nothing like Critical Role. So they're coming in expecting to get that homebrew feel and be able to do all these things, or not even do all these things, but to have that interaction and stuff like that. And then it's, it's not that, and so I do think that the Adventure League people need to start rethinking a bit, and maybe allow a bit more of the homebrew. I mean, we had one instance where a DM was trying to fudge something in Curse of Strahd because it would have made absolutely no sense as to why a new player had come in. So he just tried to put something together to tell us all at the table when we started the game of, this is what happened, and he went through the scenario. Now, he made that up. There's nothing in the book. And eventually people come and go, so you can have new people at your table every week, or a new person at least. And then he was told, and I was there when he was told, well, you've made your game not AL legal because that's not part of the book. And I thought, that just, you're hurting yourselves. Adventure League is hurting themselves, if that truly is the deal. It didn't change anything. Everything in the book still gets played the way that it's written in the book for the most part, other than, of course, role play stuff. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't change anything. It is nuance, and to just outright be like, no, that's not AL legal then. It didn't make sense to me at all. And I think with this new crop of players, and we, like I said, we alone, I can imagine other places, we've gotten quite a few new players. If you ask them why they decided to come, it was because of watching Critical Role or some of the others. I apologize, Critical Role is really the only one I watch, but I know there's quite a few out there now that have become popular. And that being the case, you've got to open up more to the freedom. You really do. It's got to be. You've got to allow for the DMs to have the freedom to take these little side paths and to do these things here and there, like you would in a homebrew game. You could play Curse of Strahd, and people do. You play Curse of Strahd as a homebrew game, all those extra nuances and things can happen. I did watch Chris Perkins, part of his game, Curse of Strahd, and even though he was following the trail, the path, going through the village of Barovia and whatnot, so a lot of the similar things happened, but they happened differently because it was different players, playing it. So it's not going to happen the same exact way, and then it's Chris Perkins' interpretation of the NPCs. There was I forget, there was something where after something was finished, they were werewolves. They were surrounded by werewolves. And I remember thinking, I don't remember that in the book. We didn't do that. And it's because it's his game. He decided to throw that in there. I did it, even though I don't know that the players know that, but in order to give them the experience while traveling down the road from one place to the next, I threw in whatever, I don't think I didn't throw in a werewolf, but I threw in a couple of other things, from the creatures that I had to choose from, and made a complete side adventure thing that to them should have flowed, and I think did flow as just part of the game. It wasn't in the book. It was to throw it at them, to help get more experience for the different places they were going, because you do have to make sure that they level up. One of the issues that we had in the game was we were at the Ember Temple, and everybody was a little, couple of levels too low. So that does happen in a game like Curse of Strahd. By the time you get to certain places, you should be certain levels. But anyway, there should be a bit more freedom. I understand in the character creation, obviously, and I understand you don't want everybody to have all the magic items. those have to come about naturally in the game. But as far as Adventure League, I think there needs to be a little bit more freedom in playing the game, and I think we're really seeing that now, because I know with the new book, the Storm Giants, we are going to have several tables of the book and not the little Adventure League modules that do come out every time a book comes out. So I think, having said that, I think that it is going that route, and I think that the people that actually set all the rules to Adventure League hopefully start seeing that, and maybe making some changes accordingly, so that you don't have the people going, you can't do that, it's not AL legal. Well, yes, you can. It's a game. It's a role-playing game. Yes, you can. So anyway, this is my little tangent based upon what I saw on Twitter today. And, agree, disagree. Hey, I'm cool with whatever you feel. This is just my opinions. Feel free to comment below. And you can contact me on Twitter if you'd like, at Kelly E. Neal. And I would be happy to have any discussions on gaming and role-playing. And I hope everyone has a great day. And I will talk to you all later. Thanks for watching.